We finally have Cassies LJ up in the shop. A lot of you guys might not even recognize this Jeep. We have not touched a thing on it, no modifications, and we've had it for a year. So it's been Cassie's daily driver, a fantastic Jeep. Finally, it's time to start doing a few upgrades on it. So we have a new DIY weld together bumper from Barnes 4-wheel drive. This is the rear bumper we're gonna put on the LJ. Up here on the front, we're probably gonna convert this over to a stubby bumper. I say we, Cassie's out of town and she finally gave me the go ahead to start working on this Jeep. We've only showed it once on the channel. Picked it up for a smoking deal. It was a salvage Jeep. The rear axle was bent. We threw a new Dana 44 in it. A couple of the control arms were messed up. We threw some stock replacements in, and the rear corner was just completely smashed. So we took it to a body shop, got that all fixed up. It is looking good, but the rear bumper was unsavable. So that's kind of why we're starting off with bumpers. This has been a fantastic Jeep, super reliable, and it's just fun to drive. There's something about LJs. They are really, really cool Jeeps. So let's go check out this bumper and start getting that put together. Let's see what we have here. So this weld together rear bumper is a fantastic way to save some money. If you know how to weld and you don't mind painting it and doing it yourself, it's like half the price of aftermarket bumpers. Barnes 4-wheel drive has these available for a few different models. YJ, TJ, JK, they have the Pritchett Canyon frame chop, rear bumper, front bumper. Now these DIY bumpers are really nothing new, but this one actually looks pretty nice. There's minimal weld area, so it's not like we're welding the entire bumper together. We're just kind of finishing it off. So it's already bent, ready to go. We're just gonna have to weld these seams. Looks like we have to weld the mounting brackets on, the receiver hitch, recovery point, and we have everything we need here to assemble this bumper. It looks nice and clean, nice, sleek, low profile bumper. And the cool thing about this is, opposed to some of the other DIY bumpers, you're not welding every single seam. So if you're not the best welder and you can't lay down the prettiest welds, these would be pretty easy to grind down, smooth up, and still look pretty good, opposed to some of the other ones where pretty much every corner of the bumper has to have welds on it. So this should be a pretty quick project and it should look pretty good. It's not too heavy. I'm liking this. Now before we start assembling the bumper and welding it, we want to do a quick test fit to make sure none of these bins got damaged during shipping, because it would kind of suck to weld this together and it doesn't fit. Looks like we're good to go. After a successful test fit, we are good to start welding up this bumper. We're going to start with all of the seams before we start assembling things onto it. Personally, to get really clean welds, I like using some MAP gas to preheat the metal. It just really lets the weld soak in better. Weld Clean, this is an anti-spatter spray, so you spray down where you're going to weld, and all of the spatter doesn't stick to the metal, it just brushes right off. We got some rubbing alcohol to prep the surface, as well as a wire wheel to really clean up the metal and give us some good looking welds. I am going to start on the inside of the bumper so I can get the welder dialed in to lay down some really pretty welds. So I'm pretty sure I've got the welder dialed in to the settings that I want. So, you know, one of the reasons I like to do it on the backside first is just before we start welding to the outside, we know that it's dialed in and it's putting down some pretty welds. Now, you always can on these DIY bumpers, grind them smooth if they don't look perfect, because in the end, by the time you put paint on it, it's gonna kind of look like that anyway. So far, I'm pretty happy with how my welds are turning out. Definitely not a pro, but the race Jeep gave me plenty of practice. So next up is to weld our recovery hooks on, or the recovery points. And they do kind of follow the contour of the bumper. We're gonna weld the outside as well as the back side. But this is some super thick metal, and this is where the preheat's gonna come into play. So we're gonna crank up the welder to make sure we get some really good penetration, especially since this is a recovery point. Tack weld it and then heat it up with MAP gas and just completely send it. Next up is gonna be the receiver hitch block. Now, I'm sure this is not rated for actual towing, but you know, the LJ isn't either. So if we're carrying a cargo rack or even a small utility trailer, this should do the trick. What we're gonna do is just slide this in there. We don't want it so far in that we can't get the pin in. So we're gonna have to mess with the depth a little bit. And then we have these gussets that are gonna weld on the bottom, not only to increase the strength, but also act as our little, our chain hoops. So I'm gonna try to figure out where this is gonna sit, tack weld it up, get the gussets on, and weld that all in. So far, it's going together pretty easy. I know at this point you're tired of watching me weld, but there's two things I want to point out real quick that I wish I would have done differently. So these plates right here, I would suggest putting them in before you weld the receiver hitch in, because I went to put them in and they wouldn't fit. So I decamped them a little bit sideways, and that's just to prevent the bumper from sandwiching in when you weld the receiver hitch. So that's the first one. The second one is welding on the inside of the bumper. I went to put this plate in where I welded this inside corner right here. I had to grind that down so this would sit completely flush. We want this to sit nice and level. I'll have to do the same thing on the other side. All we have to remember to do is put these bolts in and the little retainer before we weld this together. And then after that, we are good to go ahead and clean this bumper up, sand it down if we want to, and put a layer of paint on it. So tomorrow we'll be able to come out here and bolt it on the Jeep. I am really happy with how this rear bumper turned out. You know, it's low profile, lightweight. We now have some recovery points as well as a small utility hitch. So only thing that I have to do is find the mounting bolts that go from underneath. I have no idea where those are, so I'll probably have to run to the store, grab some of those, but the bumper came out really good. I'm a big fan of this Ace Hardware satin black paint. Turns out really good and tends to hold up really well. All we have to do now is turn our attention to the front. I'm sure eventually we will put an aftermarket front bumper on, but in the meantime, we can go ahead and spice up this factory bumper a little bit. It definitely needs a coat of paint on it. It has seen better days, but I want to go ahead and pull off these toe points because we're not gonna be flat toeing this Jeep. I feel like it might be a good time just to weld up and close all these holes off, the ones that aren't used, as well as cut this back and turn it into more of a stubby bumper, but keep these factory end caps. First thing we have to do is pray that these Torx bolts on our recovery hooks come off fine, pull the bumper off, and see how much of this factory bumper we can take back to turn it into a stubby. What are you doing? Are you trying to eat my foot pad? No, we need that, buddy. Just hit it with the big impact. Okay, that one worked. So the plan to stubbotize this bumper is just to make this exact same cut in a little bit, but we have to take a look at our end caps and realize how far they go in. So we can only go in as far as the frame's going to allow us, which in our case is roughly right there. If we move this bumper all the way in as far as we can go, we gain about 4.5 inches of clearance on both sides. If we cut this original bumper, little bumper end, it's just plastic. If we cut it at an angle, it wouldn't do anything because it doesn't really matter if water gets in there. It would allow us to go even further. Now, one thing to think about is if we're putting it here, if you have the factory fog lights installed, you're gonna have to cut it in order to keep those factory fog lights. I'm pretty happy with how it's sitting here. It's time to go ahead and make some marks and see where we're gonna cut. Now we break out the grinder and see how close our measurements were. Well, moment of truth. Let's see if I just ruined a perfectly good stock bumper. Oh man, that looks good. Perfect. Oh yeah, this is definitely the way to go. So here we have our stubby side. It's nothing crazy, still looks kind of factory, but over here we have the original side, which in my mind just, it looks a little bit hideous, especially now that we're comparing the two. I am really liking this. So we're gonna do the same thing over on this side, 4.5 in, and get ready to clean up the edges, smooth them out, and then we'll just have to drill 2 new holes on the top and 1 on the bottom to fit those factory end caps back on. The next step in cleaning up this bumper is to fill all of these holes. So a lot of these are for the license plate, the factory little bumperettes. Probably gonna leave those open and just put bolts through them. But all of these other ones, I'm just gonna put these small little pieces of metal that I've had laying around the shop as scraps. We're gonna put those on the back side, weld these, grind it down smooth, and then paint it, and it'll give us a nice smooth bumper instead of having all these random holes here. So as you can tell, I've already prepped the metal. All we gotta do is go grab the welder, start going to town. Finally, it's time for some paint. Now that we have both bumpers finished, I figured we'd pull the LJ out, check it out in the sunlight. I am blown away with how this turned out. You know, the narrowed bumper looks so much better. Cleaned up all the holes. I still have to find some bolts to cover up those little bumperette spots. But I painted it with the Ace Hardware satin black and then topped it off with the Rust-Oleum hammered finish, and it just gave it a really nice look. So I am happy with that. Very easy upgrade if you are running a factory TJ style bumper and just want to clean it up a little bit. And the rear, of course, looks fantastic. I might come back and hit it with the Rust-Oleum hammered just to give it that little bit of texture. I think it turned out nice, but as you can tell, had to throw a little D-ring on there. So that is it for the LJ in this video. Since we're knocking out projects, I think next up we're gonna pull the F250 in the shop real quick and throw a bed cover on it. So, hey, this is a random video where we are just knocking out projects. So let's go do that real quick. This big old girl barely fits in here. It's hot, isn't it? I know, dude. It is hot. So the only thing I've really wanted to do this truck for a while was add a tonneau cover on it just to just to kind of hide whatever's in the bed. And we picked up a soft roll-up tonneau cover from Ode Row. They actually sent this out to us to do a little quick install and review video. So we're gonna check it out. That we do have a discount code, which I'll put down below and in the video description. If anybody's looking for a tonneau cover, they make them for a lot of different trucks, F250s, Gladiators, really anything that can have a bed cover, they have it, plus some other accessories. So we are going to get this out of the box and get it on the truck. Bro, people are gonna be thinking you're dying. We have a heat index of like 106 today in Oklahoma. But you want to want the whole bottle? There you go. So we're gonna start off with the weather stripping up there on the front of the bed. We're gonna clean it, throw down a layer of weather stripping, and then get the tonneau cover placed up there. We lock the rail into position, grab the hardware, and attach our rails up to the bed cover. And just like that, it latches into place on the rear. Slam it down, and our soft tonneau cover is done. So that actually looks pretty good. The Velcro seals up nice along the side. Really no wrinkles at all in the cover. I am digging that. Now, if we do need to adjust the tension, like if this is way too hard to close, all you gotta do is adjust these Allens, move these rails in and out so I can roll around with all my crap in the bed and people not judging me. So soft versus hard versus trifold. Really depends what you want out of it. I wanted a soft roll up for this one just because like whenever we want to haul something big and use the entire bed, it's nice just to roll the whole thing up, have all the usable space. On the Gladiator, we had the hard Diamondback cover, and that was a great cover, very secure, but you lost a lot of bed space. You know, if we were gonna haul a refrigerator in the bed, you couldn't because it just folded up. You'd have to take it all the way out. So with this, I just wanted the soft roll up. Thanks Odro for sending this out. Turned out really nice, and I would highly recommend it for anybody looking for an affordable bed cover. So that's it for this video, guys. We're kind of all over the place. Wanted to get the LJ bumpers finished up, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. Excited for Cassie to get back into town to see them. I know she's gonna be ecstatic about how well it looks. Thanks for watching, guys. Like always, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon.